Good evening,
Wow.
everybody. We are live and welcome to everyone tonight to our webinar on unlocking the New South Wales newly approved planning changes for the low and mid-rise. For those of you who don't know who we are, there's a few new faces on here tonight. I'm Marie Doyle. And
Ben Doyle.
This is Ben Doyle. And we're bringing you this event tonight just to share with you some of the planning changes. It's what we do with some of our clients. We're also experienced developers in this industry, and these changes have a monumental effect on us right now.
Absolutely.
So we are going to kick off with a bit of a presentation. So if you just bear with us while we share the screen with the slides in it, we will set
and we
that
should
up.
appear in your, I believe we appear in your bottom right-hand corner or somewhere on the side to be seeing us at the same time.
Fantastic.
So why don't we kick off? So we are TDM, the Development Mentor by Fiducia. We have been developing now for over 24 years in total. Fiducia has been around for 21 years coming this year. So we have a vast array of experience in the development game. We've completed over 711 dwellings, so apartments and houses throughout New South Wales, Queensland, and down in Victoria. So there's a fair depth of knowledge and understanding. And I guess one of the biggest insights is being around other industry leaders and other industry people, and a lot of our friends are the other big developers in town as well. So you learn a lot, you share a lot, and you embrace that and be able to pass that knowledge on. And we encourage others to learn and be adopting some of these skills and some of this knowledge.
Absolutely. So for anyone who doesn't know, our company Fiducia, we specialise in boutique residential development throughout Sydney. We're currently building a pipeline of projects at the moment. We're just completing a project currently in Cronulla. We're TikTok on the clock. We've just about got our strata plan registered and about to close out an OC. Yep. So for anyone who's
literally minutes away,
anyone who's experienced that will know what we're going through today. It's super exciting when you get to the pointy end of a project and then can start to settle people into their new homes. We absolutely love what we do. We're very passionate about this, as Ben mentioned before. That's a little bit of an insight into what we're doing. And the reason, again, why we're here tonight is to share with you some of the new planning changes and how you can benefit from these in your own businesses. So whether you're a developer, an investor, maybe you're a homeowner who has been affected by these changes, our goal tonight is to really share with you what those changes are, how you can take advantage of them, how you can use those opportunities to either go out and find new small-scale developments for yourself.
Yep.
Or potentially just be educated on what those planning changes are and what they can mean for you in terms of an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen, and it feels like this is one of those weeks. It feels like. And it's difficult because you've got to see all sides of the spectrum. I look at it from a consumer side, I look at it from a developer side, and I also like to look at it from the council and the planners and the government side, because the better the view that we have, the better the understanding of everything that's going on. And, councils cop an awful grief, government cops an awful grief for not doing enough and not expanding the zoning enough and changing, floor space. They cop a lot of grief for all of this. However, this is the greatest changes that we've seen in around 5 decades. These are the greatest planning changes in 50 years. The CDC, the Compliant Development Certificate pathway, is incredible. It gives you an immediate pathway to be able to get approvals where you don't have to go through a council pathway with a development application. You're dealing with private certification in a private certification model, which fast tracks that process. You could be getting an approval in 12 to 16 weeks rather than 6, 9, 12 months. And so there's a lot that's happening. The Liberal government brought in the CDC pathway in 2013 from memory, and now they're expanding on this and have been expanding on this even further. Now under Labor, but the pathway now and the changes that have happened are monumental, and we're going to unpack some of that tonight. And again, Could there be other things that could have been put in and adopted? Absolutely. But this pathway that we've got now, I believe it's fantastic. I believe it's really opened up a lot of new opportunities, which we're going to talk about some of those numbers. And we're talking in the thousands of opportunities right now. Now, how can you take advantage of those? Where are those at? We're going to unpack a little bit of that as well.
Absolutely. So this all came about as a bit of a response from New South Wales Planning to what we're currently experiencing or has been called the housing crisis. And so it's really been a response.
Housing crisis has been going on for the last
for a very long time. It feels like it's been packaged into a marketing scheme to say this is the housing crisis. Yeah. In whatever respect it is, it's broken into two different things. So you've got the transport orientated development, which is really the train stations or the transport hubs around key areas throughout New South Wales. And then you've got the low and mid-rise housing. Now, a lot of developers went out, especially the larger developers, and really focused in on those transport orientated development sites. There's still some contentious issues around some of the councils in Sydney, like Ku-ring-gai Council and things, trying to unwind some of those planning regulations and potentially come up with some alternative schemes for that. But there's that side of the fence where you have got the larger scale developments. And then what Ben and I love and what we've been talking about for probably the last 14 months to all of our clients and the people we deal with and in our own research and projects that we're looking at is the low and mid-rise housing. And we believe this is where the majority of the work can be done to solve this housing crisis, because you would have heard that feasibilities aren't stacking at the top end of town. It's too expensive to build those things. Construction costs are too high. Low and mid-rise, we're dealing with largely class 1 building, which is a lot more cost effective to deliver. Firstly, the entry price and barrier to entry is a lot lower. The feasibilities are stacking better. And you've got a broader range of developers that can take these on. You know, some of these projects, when we talk about low and mid-rise, are things like dual occupancies, terrace houses and manor houses. Now, the larger developers can't take those on board. You know, this is down to the small scale developers that can go and do a dual occupancy for profit and make $1 million on a dual occupancy, or build a set of terraces and have a modest return. But a lot of these larger developers can't gear their machine up to do this. So this is really
too big by that stage. Too many staff,
of course,
too many overheads, too much to manage. So the smaller projects such as these, they go missed by a lot, and a lot of smaller builders are doing them and smaller developers. But we believe, and we can see by the numbers and the stats that are out there, that there's a massive opportunity in this space, and it's a consistent opportunity that just keeps on arriving all the time. You might just want to zip that a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's currently what we're looking at, and this is what we call the missing middle. It's been coined, it's been phrased, this has been running around for a while. There is the larger scale development, which Marie mentioned, which is the transport orientated development to the TODs around major train station hubs.
High rise.
But then you've got the rest, which is your communities, your small villages everywhere. And what the government's looked at is said, well, how can we create some better infrastructure in those, not infrastructure, better density in those areas that already have the infrastructure. So they've taken a view of how many town centres we can classify based on the style of shopping that might be there, whether it's a Coles or a Woolworths, an IGA, those type of things. So they've looked at that, and they've run out a series of updates which talks about how many of those town centres are, where they are, and then how you can take advantage of those around those town centres between 400 and up to 800 metres of those areas. And then how you classify the distance where it's measured from. You get down to the minutiae detail and the nitty gritty, which is actually the devil's in the detail. This is the really important stuff. So we're gonna give you an overview of some of this tonight, so you can start to understand more of this opportunity that's there.
Absolutely. So here's what we know so far about the planning legislation that's rolled out. We know the TOD accelerated rezoning has been approved. We know the low-rise housing diversity code has been approved, and that's been around for a few years. That's your traditional CDC pathway that you would see that's already in place. A lot of people, interestingly enough, still don't know what is accessible under this particular code already. And so what's interesting is that's been around a long time, but what is now going to be more interesting is that with the low and mid-rise housing policy, that stage 1 of it was approved in in July last year, which was for the dual occupancies, permissible statewide, not within the zones that they've identified now, but statewide in all R2 zoned areas. So what that means is where there was a council where previously a dual occupancy was not permissible in an R2 zone, it is now permissible. Now, this is being sort of worked out in the 13 councils across New South Wales, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
More than 13.
Yeah, and then stage 2, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, which is the exciting stuff, is the low and mid-rise policy, which is now approved. And this is really where it's at. This is the changes that we've been waiting for, and this is the significance of doing this call tonight. So here we are. We've got our transport orientated development, which again is approved. The whole purpose of this is to provide density close to the train stations. We're not going to talk about this tonight. The low rise housing code, again, already approved. We're not going to talk about this tonight. This is really the fast track process where you can go through complying development to get these approvals through, and they have to meet a set of criteria specific to those potential properties. But this is what we're going to talk about tonight. So this is basically what they have approved today, which is a more diverse set of well-designed homes within well-located areas. So there's 171 town centres and stations which have been identified across New South Wales, which we'll touch on in a minute, to give more permissibility and control to those areas. So, and within 800 metres of those, you will be able to do increased density within those areas, and it affects almost 200,000 properties across New South Wales. So,
which ultimately means opportunity. Opportunity and the ability to, create an impact is, small scale development is extremely beneficial in the sense of it hits into the lower risk category of developing. You're only developing 2 lots, certainly in dual locks, or then if you start to look at terraces, you might be doing 3s or 4s. However, the whole structure of it going under class 1 as well rather than class 2. Class 2 construction, there's a plethora of requirements now that's really been perpetuated with the building commissioner's changes over the last 3 years. They're excessive. They're extensive, not excessive. They're extensive. The changes that have been implicated into what's going on in our general day-to-day development for Class 2 right now, and it's not for the faint-hearted, because there is an extraordinary amount of work that's going into it, and this is why for a lot of new people coming into this space, Class 1 dual locks seems to be the number one shining avenue to create developments in.
And just for anyone that doesn't really understand class 1 or class 2, when we're talking about that, that just determines the type of class that the building's in and the compliance that's required for delivering that type of building. And as an example, a class 1 building would be potentially like a dual occupancy, terrace houses, townhouses, a manor house. It's basically where you don't have anyone living on top of you within a separate dwelling, whereas a residential flat building would be a common area basement with then individual apartments stacked on top. That has a whole different level of requirement from compliance, everything from acoustic to fire to strata management and all of that encapsulation. And just purely on a cost basis alone, you've got things like additional consultant costs that are required. You've got additional engineers that are required to produce that type of building. The costs are a lot more loaded from a construction perspective, and then you've got things like liability of developer bonds and things, which most people that are new developers don't have the ability to take that on. I mean, Ben and I have been developing for 20 years in this industry, and we've done over 60 projects, and we started out in renovation and alterations in addition, and then we moved into new build because it's a step-by-step process. But if you are starting out and you are starting in this smaller area, which is what we love so much, is that this area really has the ability for developers to come on board and actually and actually get started in development quite successfully through this low rise policy without having to take on too much.
Correct. And for that matter, stay in that space.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great lane to be in. You know, I've met small builder developers that have been doing the same type of model for 20 or 30 years, consistently doing small builds, build, sell, and they're successful at it. They stick to a good model that works. And then, you know, it's from there, it's about creating a brand and creating a market, you know, a profile within the market. So you start to get a following on your next projects and investments.
So this is the policy. This is what we're going to talk about tonight. The 171 town centres and stations. We're not going to go through all of them, but we can direct you to the place where you can go and research those for yourself. We are going to talk about the 800-metre walking distance from the edge of those town centres. So, you know, in the last 18 months in the lead up to this, there's been a lot of speculation around what that distance would look like and what would be encapsulated and how they would measure it. So, you know, a lot of developers were sort of going in, here's the middle of the town centre, guessing and then drawing a line out 800 metres. We now know it needs to be walking distance. Yeah. So you need to get your measure out and measure how it would be.
Yeah, and there's online maps that'll take.
There will be online maps for that will show you that.
Starts tomorrow.
So that starts tomorrow, and it is measured from the edge of the town centres. So whereas previously it was identified it would be the centre, it's actually the edge of the zone, which makes that a lot better. There is over 200,000 properties. Some of these are not going to be applicable for everything. When you actually go through and you apply some of the existing controls that exist on them, I think it ends up being closer to probably 120,000 properties by the time you take out the existing reforms.
And on that point, so the 200,000 plus properties are in relation to the new town centre, not just the R2, because if you look at the R2 right across New South Wales, there's even more opportunities. But of those 200,000 here, that means the potential is upwards of 400,000 homes to be built if you were looking just purely at dual locks.
Yeah,
so
it's a multiplier.
So it's an unknown about how many of these opportunities are out there, but they're literally tens of thousands of new opportunities.
Well, this is the 200,000 land properties as they are today, which could be single dwelling.
Yeah.
They could be then, you're absolutely right. If they were a multiplier of 2, it could be 400.
Yep.
Terrace houses, RFBs. I mean, this is what I think people are not really understanding the impact of what this is from a density perspective. So this is going to affect properties across different zones, and with the new permissibility, this is going to become a SEP policy. And it's also as of tomorrow, so as of the 28th of February 2025, it will be loaded up into the maps and it will be SEP policy released. We're going to talk about what it means to be a non-discretionary development standard. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the original RFB FSR height, and that did get scaled back similarly to what happened with the transport-orientated development controls. Obviously, they consulted all of the councils and community feedback. And so that feedback was given. There was actually an amended EIE or update last year, and they leaked that and that came out. So most people kind of knew what was going on, but it has been scaled back from the original. We're going to talk about the bonus FSR for affordable housing and what the restrictions are on the sites, some good, some bad. And then we're going to also share the top regions. We've done pulled some stats on that for you, and then we've got a special little gift for you as well. So let's rip in. Okay, so do you want to talk about the 6 cities?
So 6 city regions. So you're essentially from top north to lower south. So top north, under the 6 city region, Nelson's Bay, Cessnock, Newcastle areas, all the way right down to bottom of south, down to Nowra, Wollongong, Cronulla, all the southern beach areas go into there, and then out to Penrith, as farthest out west, because it doesn't include Blue Mountains and those areas due to there's a lot of bushfire prone areas, so they're removed out of some of this, some of the new changes, and then east all the way across to Manly, Maroubra, Bondi, for example.
Yeah. So here's a bit of a snapshot. Now, this map these maps are actually live on the New South Wales planning website. So you can go, this is a very zoomed out version of just as far north as sort of the northern beaches and as far south as Cronulla. But you can see there where the pockets of well-located town centres are and stations. You can see it sort of maps the way that the stations are as well. And when you zoom into those, you'll see that they're made up of two areas, the yellow area, which is the 800 metres, and then the town centre area, which is the darker zoned area in the middle, and then the purple, which is the TOD. So again, these have all been based on, a wide range of different amenities and being able to have things like, a full line supermarket, 2,000 square metres of retail. Like there's been a very strict and stringent criteria to arrive at this. There's a lot of areas that are wishing it didn't happen, but for a lot of the other areas, it's a super positive change.
Yeah.
And this is showing is how far north it goes up to Nelson Bay. You can see out there to the Hunter Valley, Newcastle, Wyong, Gosford, and then all the way down as far as Nowra down there. You've got Kiama, you've got Wollongong, Port Kembla, and all those sort of like major satellite areas on the way down. So again, this is about creating more housing choice for people in different areas, because, not always is it going to be in and around Sydney that people, want to live. Again, you've got smaller satellite areas that benefit from this new permissibility to be able to add, townhouses and terrace homes or small residential flat buildings in areas that didn't previously allow it. And as an example, not even down this far, but we had Waverley Council, for instance, for years under R3 never permitted a residential flat building. You'd have to apply for it. It wasn't prohibited, but it wasn't allowed. So that's a perfect example of it now being permissible in the policy. So this is a really interesting thing, because they have made all of these new standards what's called a non-discretionary standard. So it's also known as a non-refusal standard, which is great for people that, are really trying to make sure that you get these developments through. So a non-discretionary standard will override the LEP and the current DCP standards.
Yeah.
And this is a bit of a game changer, because I think previously on TOD developments where they weren't non-discretionary or they weren't non-refusal, everything is based on merit-based. So you'd still have to lodge a development application with council, and it would still be approved on the basis of whether the council would approve it via merit. So with a non-discretionary standard, what this is doing is it's setting up a set of guidelines and rules, which is basically getting these ready to go through what we call the CDC pathway or complying development pathway. So these standards will become a blanket for these low and mid-rise developments, which is super exciting because
so essentially if you tick the box, it's an approval process. It's not a merit base, which is subjective at the best of times. It's whether the people that are reviewing the DA application believe that it fits in with the locality and to the guidelines that they're setting based on their council region.
So let's talk about this. So we're going to go straight into the first one, which has been approved, which is the dual occupancy, which is 2 dwellings on 1 lot. So we know, and we've already spoken about statewide, it's permitted in all R2 zones. You can now do 2 houses together, a dual occupancy. The new non-discretionary development standards are going to be rolled out in all R1, 2, 3 and 4 zones with a minimum lot size now of 450, a minimum lot width of 12 metres and a minimum height of 9.5. So the exciting... This is huge because even areas like Ryde Council, some of these other councils where the minimum lot size was previously 550, that now drops to 450.
Yeah.
The minimum lot width previously was 15 metres, and some people might have a 13-metre lot frontage. They can now get in with a 12-metre lot frontage.
Yeah. So plus, if you wanted to do a dual lock in an area which might have been an R3 or an R4 zone, which primarily are RFB residential flat building zones, you couldn't do it without an approval by council. So you had to go through a development application process, and essentially they most of the time would have said no, it's not for this zoning, we're not going to allow it. So now under the new non-discretionary development standards, if you tick the box and fill the criteria, it's virtually an automatic process. So we're waiting to see how and what those exact standards are, but this is all being rolled out currently right now. This is all live information that's happening right now.
This is live, and this will be available, and we'll talk about the CDC pathway shortly. I've just put an annotation there that it excludes the 13 councils which put their hand up at stage 1 for the dual occupancy to have more time to confirm a minimum lot size. For instance, Ku-ring-gai Council have come up with some information more recently stating that they would have a minimum lot size of 1,018 outside of the LMR area, but within the low mid-rise area, or what they're calling a local housing area, they would be prepared to reduce it. So some councils have opted out to kind of have more time, but they have to set it by July 2025. If they don't, these new non-discretionary development standards will get issued. So it's an interesting time for everybody involved in the dual occupancy. But I'm going to show you in a minute in our top areas how many of these are available, because regardless of the few councils that have not played ball, you still will be able to, not necessarily on dual ocs, but be able to on the other low and mid-rise.
And then the question is always raised, well, with all of these new opportunities, so many opportunities, everybody's going to be doing it. Well, that's not the case. We've had a CDC pathway since 2013, but not everybody does it.
Correct.
It's always the case when there's a plethora of opportunities, then it comes down to discerning those opportunities. So it comes down to streets, locality, cul-de-sac locations, locations where you're not going to be staring at power lines if you do a second story dwelling. Things like, the low side, the high side of the street, the best sunlight, the best, streets with the best looking houses and neighbours. So you start to, neighbours as in neighbouring houses. So you start to break down and get into the minutiae of detail to be able to remove out any objections that you're going to ultimately get from the end purchasers on property, what they're looking at. So this is the overview. And then what we work with on our clients in the development mentor is then we start to drill down into more of the minutiae detail that we're looking at. So you can remove a lot of the other risks that you might have by making sure that you're giving the best possible project out there to the marketplace.
Absolutely. So again, these new changes affect dual occupancy, multi-dwelling, which is what we're talking about now, which again, you can read that 600 minimum lot size now, 12 metres. That's pretty straightforward. That's things like townhouses, detached townhouses. Then you've got multi-dwelling terraces, which is a minimum of 3 on one lot. And so, for instance, if you had an 18-metre width on a lot now, you just need a minimum 6 metres per terrace to be able to execute that. So at a minimum of 18 metres, you can have 3 lots at 165 square meters each at a minimum. So again, this is a game changer.
This is a game changer,
and not necessarily talking about larger developments. Like a minimum lot size of 500 square meters affects a lot of these more inner city type areas, which are closer into Sydney, which previously may not have had the ability to do this, or may not have had the ability to do it without any kind of contesting, floor space ratios or height or minimum lot sizes. So this is a really defined and easy way.
Well, and just on that point, how do we get more keys indoors?
Yeah.
And these are the changes. So to be able to remove one old home and build 3 back, this is when we start to get this multiplier. And, there is a pent up demand for people looking for well-priced new homes. And it's not always the larger end of town. It's how do we get into the areas that the people have grown up in, what the villages, the rides, the Putneys of the world, these areas where they've got huge like a huge demographic that have been there. The grandparents are living there, the children have grown up in there. It's generational. And this is how we can keep people into these missing middle sections, is by being able to develop and have these fast approval process to be able to do these type of developments. This is huge. This is a really big game changer for everybody right now.
I agree. Okay, so Second. So then the next item in this is the residential flat buildings, and this is probably where the most significance has happened in terms of density and heights and dwellings. So again, there's now permissibility in R1 and R2 zones. I don't believe this has the impact of what it does in the R3 and R4 zones, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Again, this is very similar to what you could do for terraces or multi-dwelling housing. So when you weigh up the difference of doing what we were talking about before, class 1, which is more a cost-effective build, versus class 2, why would you choose this over that? And I think, you know, there's probably some disappointment in people thinking that the R2 zone would get the same upside as the R3 and R4 zone. But I think the pushback on that is probably warranted for a lot of the R2 zones. You know, if you think about the transport-orientated development and what happened with that, a lot of the R2 zones got rezoned into transport-orientated development zones. So, you know, they are now high density, you know, super high density buildings in R2 zones. So I think this is sort of the happy medium of going, well, you know, if you take Neutral Bay and Mossman, for instance, there's a lot of R3 high density and medium density properties very close to what is the town centre at the Spit Junction there now, which fall into this area. So again, you know, these new metrics for residential flat buildings, particularly the ones where we're talking about 0 to 400 and 400 to 800, these are the biggest changes we're seeing. And this is where a lot of the developers and a lot of the vendors or the landowners are seeing the biggest uplift in their properties. So, you know, for the last 14 months, there's been a lot of developers out there, you know, making inroads to speak to potential landowners that want to sell their property to developers on the basis of these changes. And some of these, to give you an example, some of these R3 zones in the 0 to 400, they were originally around 0.7 to 1 or 0.8 to 1 FSR, and they're now 2.2. So you can see the windfall that, you know, a house that may have been worth $3 or $4 million as a standalone property could now have a value of 8 to 10. And, you know, it's significant in the areas where they're also got higher residual values at the end as well. So, you know, a lot of these inner city areas like the Upper North Shore and, you know, the eastern suburbs and the Lower North Shore, you know, they have sales rates of over $25,000 a square metre, a lot of them, even up to, you know, Manly's got 50,000, Double Bay 60, 70, like these are big numbers. So to get this increase in this floor space in these particular areas is quite significant. And I think, you know, whether you're doing the residential flat buildings and that's your path you're doing, or whether you're using the other aspects of the low and mid-rise housing policy, you can see where the density is going to start to come through and how that will change.
Yep.
Shop top is pretty much the same. We're not going to touch on that again. It's pretty much the same as the other one. Did everybody write that down? No. Go back. We've done a cheat sheet for you. It's a quick planning guide. You can scan the QR code.
You should be able to do that on your screen now. So if you grab your phone out, you'll be able to put your phone up, QR code, and that should automatically link through.
Can you test it for me? Make sure I did it right.
I'm testing it through right now.
And that should bring you up a PDF instantly. Boom.
There it is.
So everybody, that's your gift from us to you. It's a cheat sheet so that you can, you know, you don't have to keep going back to the planning portal all the time. What you will need to do is understand where your site is and what the zoning is, and then you can use this cheat sheet to help you navigate that. I can't see any of your faces, but I hope you're all clapping and smiling. All right.
Right.
These are the steps that you need to take for these developments. We're going to share this with you now because, you know, knowledge is great, but knowledge with action is power. And we believe in being able to, you know, share these steps with you guys so that you can actually get out there and execute on this stuff. It's not much point in just knowing it if you don't know what to do. Agreed? Agreed. All right. So this is the first thing you need to do. The map on the right-hand side is what the LMR maps currently look like. If you go to the New South Wales Planning website or you type up low mid-rise and go to New South Wales Planning, that is what it actually looks like there. So you can see the purple is what is the TOD. The blue outline is what the new town centre is identified as, and then the orange or the yellow is what is identified as the 800 metres currently. So you'll see some sections that are blocked out within those. They could be special areas like E2, or they could be part of the existing town centre. Each area like Cronulla and other places like that, they have their own E2 town centres, which already has strategic advice and planning on it based on, years of planning out what that town looks like. So in no way, shape or form is these new policy going to affect that. So it really only deals with the area in the yellow for what we're talking about today, the low and mid rise. And again, the TOD stuff is actually, just one second, I'm just going to put my phone on to do not disturb. Yep, okay. And the TOD is in the purple, so you need to check the exclusions, which we're going to run through in a second. You need to check that it's not transport orientated development, because this will not apply in there. And you need to confirm that it's 800 metres walking distance from the edge of the map. So tomorrow, this is the example on the development portal, the spatial planning portal, which is the transport orientated development map. So it will appear in the portal the same way, but for the LMR. So it says it's going to be mapped from tomorrow. So you'll be able to select the drop down in the set planning and get the overlay of what that is. We're hoping that it will also break up the 400 and 800 distinctively. Excuse me. So at the moment, all we're seeing on that other map is the full extent of the LMR, whereas we're hoping that with the mapping, they'll actually identify what is 400 and what is 800. So stand by, we will know that tomorrow. So some of the exclusions are things like bushfire prone land and flood prone land and high risk, which kind of marries off with the current CDC pathway. So if you were trying to do a complying development on your land at the moment, you would also be excluded from doing a complying development if you were in a bushfire or you had some form of flood or, high risk river or biodiversity. You would be excluded in any case from doing it. They've put in a pipeline, 200 metres of a dangerous pipeline, aircraft noise. Again, these are all items that you can check on the planning portal to see if your site's applicable. Now, the interesting one that everybody's been waiting for is it going to affect us if we are in a heritage area?
Yeah.
And so the information that has come through so far on the exclusions is that as long as it is not a heritage listed site or a heritage list or contains a heritage listed item on the state register or LEP, then all bets are off. Yep.
So not a heritage conservation area, but a heritage listed item, which is very different, because you've got whole regions in some councils, large regions that are listed as heritage conservation areas, and they're very restrictive on what you can do in those regions. Whereas now it's going to be specific to if it's listed as a heritage item or not.
Correct.
Which is great.
There's some exclusions in the Hawkesbury Blue Mountains, as Ben mentioned earlier today, and that's just largely due to the requirements with
bushfire and its access in and out, which is the hardest part for them.
And Bathurst.
Yeah.
They're out. So the affordable housing bonuses for anybody that wants to take these on. So where the transport orientated development planning came out, they made it a mandatory percentage of every development had to be delivered in perpetuity, so in built form. They haven't pushed the affordable bonuses or provisions onto the low mid-rise housing as a requirement. However, you can access these under the current SEP bonus provisions, or where it is allowed or where it is required in infill developments. And I've just put an example there because you can get built form bonuses of up to 30% FSR, and there's also a height bonus as well, as long as you're providing 10% affordable housing. So just a quick example, if you've got 1,000 square metres of land and the FSR was 2.2, your GFA or gross floor area would be 2,200 square metres. If you were to apply the bonus, the FSR of 2.2, 30% on that becomes 2.86 to 1. You're getting 2,860 square metres. Of that, 10% has to go to affordable housing, so 286 square metres. So that's the equivalent of roughly sort of three or four apartments. But you get a bonus of 374 square metres, which you can use as apartments which are saleable or net saleable or or buildable, that you can retain for your feasibility effectively. So there's a bonus in doing that if you do want to access those, and obviously that's encouraged. We're trying to get a diverse mix of different housing products in the market, and one of them being obviously affordable housing. This is
and the affordable housing, that's majority of key worker.
Key worker,
yeah, so
what they're calling affordable.
Fireys, nurses, emergency services, fire police, ambulance, emergency services, nurses, things like that. Teachers
Correct.
are applicable for it.
Key worker.
Key worker.
There's different, I guess there's elements of affordable housing, and then there's social housing. So they're two very different things. We could do a whole event on that, but we're not tonight. The other thing they've introduced for this is the tree canopy guide, which I think is relevant for so many people that were concerned about what's going to happen to the koalas and what's going to happen to the trees. This is really interesting. It's available on the New South Wales Planning website, and it very strictly straightforward states the number of percentages, the percentage of landscaping required for deep soil, and the percentage or the number of trees that is required. To give you an example, under the dual occupancy, it is one new tree of a certain literage that needs to be included in the landscaping design. It's not exorbitant. I think there's a 20 to 25% allowance on that. Like it seems to be relevant. I haven't digested it fully. It's just come out, but that is also available as a guide and needs to be considered within the context of whatever applications you're making. Second. Okay. So as we were talking about before, the fast track. So the CDC, or the compliant development, is going to become available in these newly permitted areas. The caveat behind that is obviously in those existing areas we spoke about before, there's still going to be a pathway available, but not until the middle of 2025. So the intention, I believe, and this will become apparent in the next couple of days, is that the CDC will become available as this policy comes into place tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure whether that is actually going to be live and active in all areas, or whether there is going to be a delay on that to the middle of the year. Some councils, as we mentioned before, are still requiring a DA. However, the majority of this housing policy should be under CDC pathway. If it's not tomorrow, it will be, I believe, in the coming months.
Top areas. So what this does is just highlight some of the new opportunities with the FSR uplift. So if you look at, and what we've done here is just highlight some of the larger quantities that are available. So Georges River, 6,333 new FSR uplifted opportunities in land. So then you've got Ku-ring-gai, there's going to be 4,800 new opportunities, 7,700 new opportunities over in Newcastle. Northern Beaches is also huge. Northern Beaches, unless they are permitted or unless they approved a dual lock through council, which primarily they never have, this is going to open a real floodgate for Northern Beaches because they've never really had dual locks before. And Ku-ring-gai Council, for that matter, it's pretty much on par. Then you've got down to, where are we, Ryde. We've got another 7,000 opportunities with FSR uplift, and they've also reduced the reduced the land size, and also they reduced the site, the boundary width at the front, which is opening up to even more opportunities, which is huge. And then Sutherland is the clear winner here with another 9,800 opportunities coming up. So potentially, if they're dual locks, that's another 20,000, almost 20,000 homes that could be being built into these areas. And then what are we finishing in Wollongong with another 4,000? That's huge. Like between the three of those, what are we, 10, there's almost 30, around 25 to nearly 30,000 new opportunities just between those ones.
And I guess what this is really showing is, we talked about this, over 200,000 plots of land applicable for development or for higher density or low mid-rise. And of those, this is basically looking and going, you know, there's a few that are excluded from this LMR, either by way of, you know, the exclusions for floodplain or some of the other exclusions, heritage or whatever, some that just have no benefit because they've probably already got an allowance. And you'll see the ones that have got the uplift, which is, you know, 128,000 across these regions in New South Wales, which again is significant if you're talking about delivering multiple dwellings on each of these.
Yeah.
And to give you an example, I mean, you look at Wollongong, okay, they were saying there's 4,800, they're getting 4,000. So it's pretty, you know, and even places like Wallara, which, you know, is one of the most contentious councils in Sydney, 5,500 are applicable, you know, 3.5, that's still a significant number of lots huge within the area, which again are not subject to council merit-based assessment. These are subject to the set of non-discretionary rules. And what we're also going to see come out, which we haven't included in tonight's presentation, but anyone who's been around us knows that we did a presentation earlier in the year or last year on the pattern books, which are set by the government architect and put out to a range of architects and professionals in our in the New South Wales region to develop and come up with designs and schemes which are effectively a print and repeat. So it's not dissimilar to what we saw probably in the Art Deco area where, you know, you've got your blocks of Art Deco all through Sydney. What they're trying to do is make replicatable design, and the designs are very good. The designs are nice. Some of them we've seen are incredible. So those designs are actually now live on the New South Wales Planning website, which talks about good design. And those designs will be able to be picked. So you'll be able to select, for instance, you know, go down and go, okay, I've got my 500 square metre block for a multi-dwelling terrace. I'll be able to select a terrace design. I'll be able to plug that in. I'll be able to submit it to a CDC pathway, and you'll be able to get a fast approval. Well, you've just reduced your cost base in trying to pull together an architect and a design. You've just reduced your time value, you know, required to wait for that to be produced. You can add in whatever finishes and upgrades you want to for the product. But I think they're almost going as far as even plugging in builders into these as well. Trusted builders that can then plug in and price these for you too. So it becomes almost like a one-stop shop to be able to develop this. They're trying to make it easier. And, you know, there's some people that would agree that this is an excellent outcome. And of course, you're always going to get people that say it's not a great outcome. But, you know, if the point of this is to deliver houses, which it is, you know, this is the fast track and the fastest way to do it. So, you know,
it's a pre-approved set of blueprinted plans that you buy from the government, which is repeatable, and you'll get the structurals, you'll get all the breakdown of it, so then the builders can price it, and then that's buildable, and that'll give you a fast track solution to be able to break dirt and essentially be building quicker.
And as I said, Ben and I have been across this for probably the last 14 months and involved in some of these conversations where we sort of got to view some of these designs early on, and it really is it's about how do you create a system or a way for delivery in this market where, you know, it becomes cost effective. And we're not talking about large scale developments, although they will have small residential flat buildings available in these designs.
Yeah, and it's also to try and remove the elements of missing the construction in the right manner to avoid, you know, water penetration issues, and it's basically a solution or an answer to try and mitigate a lot of the poor construction that's happened also over the last few years in poorly designed projects and poorly designed methodologies of how to build these things. So pattern books have been around since the 1800s in Australia, all the way right up in and just before the 1970s, they ceased to exist and they were stopped here in Australia. So then we had the red brick, yellow brick era of the 1970s, and arguably probably some of the worst architecture that I've seen compared to the beautiful Art Deco era. And a lot of the old Art Deco buildings were part of this pattern book design. That's why you see so many of them that all look quite similar. So that was an easy methodology for builders to be able to get the pattern book design from the government and to actually build according to that design. So now we've come around 50 years later, we're coming back to that solution again, which is quite exciting. Now it's going to come down to making sure that all of those things roll out. And so we're just waiting to see the finalization of all those designs, which is hopefully, I think, again, by
by the middle of the year. So they're talking, May to July at this stage. So it's very exciting.
Again, how do you take advantage of this?
These are all opportunities that are there, right? Yeah. You've heard a lot of information tonight, and there's a lot more work that you can do to start to unpack this. These are just some suggestions for how you can get started using the tools and starting to understand that, having a direct approach, whether, and the clients that we work with in our advisory, we're teaching them how to actually directly approach landowners and be able to have those conversations in a meaningful way that can enable them to, structure options or JV agreements or, JVs with builders and what that looks like, working with real estate agents and buyers and getting on board with them and letting them know what it is you're looking for and the opportunities you're looking for, so you're front of mind for those people that are looking to do these as development sites. And then it comes down to understanding the design, the planning, and what the product is that you ultimately want to do. So this is all a step-by-step process that you obviously need to go through. One of the big things in all of this is to always make sure you're considering your feasibility. There's some key points there, which is, about your land, your financing costs, understanding the impact of what your sales are at the end, and understanding your construction costs. These are some of the things that, we work with our clients on to make sure that they're absolutely nailing this part of it. Because again, if you want to be in development, this is, you don't want to be in it. It's not a hobby. For most people, it's a pathway to wealth or a pathway to creating value in your own life. So again, understanding and getting these numbers right is really, really important. I threw this in here because it was a slide we put up from one of our events last year. And, I love this because, our whole time of being in fiducia and having this business for 20 years has always been about adding value. And so it doesn't matter how you add value, and you can add value in any way. The things that we've spoken about today are great, but ultimately as a developer or as a small scale developer or whatever you're doing in this business, the number one thing in property development is how can you add value? And that can be through a DA, a CDC. It's turning one lot into two. It's, doing a subdivision. It's getting a long dated option that you can add value by, having that time to be able to add something to it. It's a subdivision. It's a renovation. There are so many ways in property that you can add value. And I think if you always have the mindset of how can I add value to this property, it's always about looking at it from that perspective. It's then about what is the end value going to be to that person? Who is the end buyer? And am I creating something that is of value for what this purpose is? So looking at the low and mid-rise housing policy today, is what you're creating of value for what has been created here? And I think that is such an important question. The second key, we believe, is leverage, because, leverage is really important in any type of property deal. And, you will be working with finance partners and other people to be able to leverage your money so you can get into these deals and be able to do more of these deals. It's great to do one, but it's better once you get going on this, you're going to have a set of skills that are going to enable you to keep going and going and going. And you want to be able to leverage your capital so you can be doing more than one project. And the final part is systems, which again, if you have never been in development before or you are in development, having systems is key. So understanding the development process, tapping into people that can help you educate and upskill on that, making sure, you've got your due diligence checklists, you've got your feasibility templates, you've got your agreements in place that you'll use for joint ventures, you've got your builder checklist down, how to run a tender, what to do when the construction's going on, how to close out a building, how to do a handover. Like, these are the systems and processes that you need to be able to be successful in property with development. A little plug from us, because we thank you all for being here today, but we do have our development mentoring, which it's not a course, so it's not just a learn and repeat. We only take on a certain number of clients because we are developing ourselves. We've got a pipeline of projects that we actually develop through Fiducia. We started the development mentor in 2023 at the end of the year when we came out of corporate, and we decided we wanted to be able to teach more people. We saw that the missing middle was a major issue and that there was going to be this uplift in the market. We're here to help coach you guys through this. If this is something you want to do, it's mentoring. It's over a period of either 13 or 26 sessions, and we work together one-on-one in an online format to be able to coach you through exactly what you want and how to give you the support. It's high touch. We answer, it's all completely personalized. So you come with your strategy and what it is you want to do.
Yeah.
And we talk you through it. If you have any questions about that, just flick us an email afterwards. We're not going to go into that today. It's all based online. There's a whole portal and everything. It's super in depth. We're super proud of this program. Our clients that have already been through it are absolutely, just doing so well with all of their developments. And yeah, we really love doing that. So thank you so much, everyone, for this evening and for being on here. We really
exciting times. This is
delivering this.
Yeah, and it's exciting. We get passionate about this because we see the opportunity, and it's not just for us. It's the opportunity in a broader market here in New South Wales, which is huge. So thank you for joining us. We hope we've added enough value to you tonight. If you've got any questions, please fire them through to us. You've got our emails. And you'll be able to, if you need any more information on TDM, just let us know. We'll be able to assist you.
And guys, if you just want to pop in the chat there, we'd love to hear your feedback from today's session. We always love doing these types of things. So, your feedback's greatly appreciated. And if you've got any questions, we keep the chat open. You can just add some questions in there. Or if you need to get in touch with us, you can shoot us an email, just marie@fiducia, fiducia.com.au. Or you can find us on our Instagram or our website. But look, stay in touch. Again, we are on LinkedIn, Instagram, all of those things. We love to deliver this type of information. So please reach out if there's anything else that we can help you with. Have a great evening and good luck with your property developments, guys. We are going to stop that now. Awesome.